Hey folks, I'm David Robinson here at Community Christian Church. Welcome to a series of discussions on people's experience with racism and prejudice. These conversations are with members of our own church, and I hope you find these very, very helpful. In this video, I sat down with one of the leaders of our church, an elder of our church. His name's Nate. So Nate, why don't you share a little bit about where you grew up and what life was like when you were growing up?
So my name's Nate Young. My wife's name is Gina, and we have a 12-year-old daughter named Hazel and a 10-year-old daughter named Pearl. So I'm biracial. My dad is black, my mom is white, and I'm biracial. I have an older brother and older sister from my mom's first marriage. They're blonde hair and blue eyes. And then my brother and myself, my two younger brothers and myself, are all from my parents' marriage. We're biracial. So I'm married to Gina, who is white, and then my two daughters are 1/4 black. Very colorful family.
Yeah.
It's cool. I lived in Baltimore City until I was 8 years old, but my formative years were just north of here in Bel Air, Maryland. Race was an interesting thing for me as a kid. It was on active display every day in my house. White people and black people loving each other and getting along. And just since I was a kid, that was just always something that brought me joy. It took me until adulthood to kind of realize that about myself. But just, driving places or, being in Baltimore and just seeing white families and black families together and just how it just felt. It felt like home. It felt right. It felt really good. So that's just an early memory that I have. For the most part, we grew up in church. So I felt really loved and accepted for the most part. I grew up, very young. We went to a predominantly black church. And then when we moved to Harford County, we went to a predominantly white church. So, felt very loved in both communities. Always felt a little out of place. I knew that, I didn't talk like the black kids and I didn't look like the white kids. So it was an interesting place to be. But I think my parents did a really good job of protecting me from prejudice and racism for the most part, but just the circles that we kept and, the friends that we had.
Do you remember an early incident, maybe the first incident you ever had where some prejudice and racism was directed straight to you?
I do. In third grade, my best bud, his name was John, and he had a birthday party, and everyone in the class was invited except for me. So I was baffled, coming out of the weekend. I said, John, why wasn't I invited to your party? And he said, my dad didn't want you there because you're black. And it was just like this watershed moment for me, as an 8-year-old, to hear that and, try to come to terms with that and understand what that meant. It affected me so deeply that I actually wrote my college essay about that.
You went to Virginia Tech?
I did.
So this is a college entrance essay to Virginia Tech, right?
Correct.
What was that about? What did you...
Well, just my experience as a biracial young person and, growing up in predominantly white America and just kind of similar to what we're talking about now, just my story.
And you talked about your parents kind of insulating you quite a bit, like they tried to protect you a little bit from that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and in some ways I think it was good, and I would do the same for my child. But I think in some ways they did a disservice by, not preparing me in the way that some parents have for what you deal with and encounter being a young black man. So, yeah, I think they had the best intentions and they did a great job.
And that's kind of changed how you've approached with your daughters.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I try to teach them to be proud about their black heritage and just to be proud about who they are as a person and who God made them to be, mostly.
And you've talked about how they're very proud of that
Absolutely.
heritage, for sure.
Absolutely. And for me as a young person, there was some shame or embarrassment about being different, about being black. And they don't have that experience at all. They're proud of it, and it makes me happy. It makes me hopeful for the future, for sure.
So you've experienced some racism and prejudice directed toward you recently in your job or with your job.
I have. I'm a real estate agent and work with all kinds of different vendors and contractors and such. And one of the contractors who I've worked with for about 10 years, it's a husband and wife team. The husband came to the property and he was talking about how his wife was having some medical issues. So I think I reached out to her later that day and just sent her an email and said, hey, if you ever want to chat, my wife Gina struggles with some of the same symptoms. So I thought we could be able to help out. We loved helping others in that way. So she didn't give me, she kind of ghosted me. I didn't hear from her. So we chatted on the phone maybe about a week later, and I brought it up, and I said, hey, look, I don't want to impose, but if you ever want to chat, Roger had mentioned that you were having some issues. So, she responded differently. It was kind of, she's like, well, Nate, we're just different. We're just different. And she kept using the word different. And so what I finally realized when she said, we talk on the phone, but you're black, so I don't think that you want to come around here, something along those lines. It hurt. It hurt deeply, and it actually surprised me how affected I was by it.
What did you do?
I mean, I think it hurt so badly because I was trying to reach out to help someone, and then I felt like I was getting attacked in some ways. So.
Just because of the color of your skin?
Correct. And I've been fortunate, unlike many of other people of color, I've been fortunate to be pretty well respected in, my community and my job and the people that I encounter. So this hurt extra bad. And, in some ways it was a prideful moment for me where I was thinking, well, I shouldn't have to endure this. But the timing was definitely God's timing because it coincided with my grandfather's 90th birthday. So we actually ended up having the longest chat we've ever had. It was about an hour long. And I told him a story about what I experienced and how I was feeling. And he had some really wise words to say. He talked about hope and how far we've come as a country and the things that he experienced as a child. And look how far we've come. Nate, did you ever think we'd have a black president? And hearing this 90-year-old man speak about, he had seen so much more than I had and experienced so much more to have so much hope. It really changed my perspective. It's helped me. So, I felt like in a lot of ways, God was prepping my heart then for what is happening here and now, helping me root out the ugliness that's in me, helping me use my position as a biracial man to bridge the gap between my white friends and my black friends, or whites and blacks in our church or in our community. What can I do? This is a unique position, and I feel like there's a responsibility as a Christian that comes along with it. So yeah, I would say I'm very hopeful. And while things are very sad and the emotion, I would say the strongest emotion that I feel is sadness, but underneath of that and through it and getting stronger is the hope. And seeing the difference between Black Lives Matter 2015 and Black Lives Matter 2020, where my white friends are on board, where the church, where God's people are doing God's work, look out. So that brings me a great deal of hope.
You talked too about your daughter, seeing a lot of hope in them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Explain that.
Well, talking about my grandfather and my dad's experience of just working hard to try to fit in, doing his best his whole life to try to fit in. And then mine, where, there's this little bit of shame that comes with my black heritage, the hurt and the pain and the little bit of shame. And then seeing Hazel and Pearl, my two daughters, and how proud they are. I mean, it's silly, and maybe they argue over which one is blacker, because sisters argue over everything. But just to see the difference, as silly as that is, to see the stark difference between, the three generations, how far we've come, and I'm hopeful that their future is brighter than mine.
When you saw George Floyd, what was going through your mind? What were you experiencing?
There's some cynicism that comes with it, where it's just, another black man. So there was a piece of that for me. Of course, sadness and just the sorrow that comes with just seeing someone's life taken in that way. But I mostly feel that it's the type of thing that enrages people, and when people are enraged, they do things. It calls people to action. So it was so quick that you could see the response that I don't think that the sorrow stayed around for very long, seeing that people are mobilizing and they want to do things, and the white community that was unaware of the ills, they want change. They want things to be better.
You shared with me, you texted me actually after a conversation we had, and you said, here's what I would say to my black friends, here's what I would say to my white friends. What was that?
I've been thinking about that, and I would say to my white friends to try to lay down defensiveness, to put it away. It's impossible to be defensive and open at the same time. And what we want is soft, open hearts. to move forward. And I think to my black friends, I would say, let's extend grace to our white brothers and sisters. Let's not hang on every word that they say. Let's not hold every comment or Facebook or Instagram post under the microscope. Let's give them freedom to speak, because I think many of my white friends, they don't want to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing. And I think if we give the grace for things to be said, we're going to see a lot of progress.
So what would you say to people who they don't know what to say?
Yeah, I think in a church of this size, everyone knows a black person. I would encourage them to reach out, to show love, to ask, what can I do? Do you need to chat? I think of the verse from Ephesians talking about shouldering one another's burdens. And I don't think that you have to have experienced someone's burden to help them shoulder it. Something else to say to the black community is there is this idea, being a black person, that white people will never understand. And I think that's a lot of times what has kept the black community silent, is because there's an eye roll. You know, you see something, maybe not George Floyd, but you see some sort of other situation, maybe not so egregious, and you say, roll your eyes and say, well, there's another one. And the white people will never understand. But I don't think that's the case. Like I said previously, you don't need to carry that burden or own that burden to help shoulder it. I don't know.
So as a key leader in our church, as an elder, you have people come to you specifically, you know?
Being an elder and being black, I think I felt more love and care than people asking for love and care themselves. So yeah, I mean, in this situation, I feel very heard by our church. And again, to not have to be fully understood, but to be understood. I mean, that's great. So that's definitely what I've experienced so far.
So how do we have civil conversations in an inflammatory world?
We talked in another conversation about how words matter. And I think there are words that are inflammatory. I think someone hears the word racist and they think of George Floyd, or they think of lynchings or the KKK. They don't think of the eye roll or the joke or...
Your third grade friend.
Correct. They don't think of that. He probably is an upstanding citizen otherwise, you know? So I think not labeling racist, prejudice as a racist, a person who has prejudice as a racist, because then you've lost them. The conversation ends there. I'm not a racist, and the person goes a separate way. So I think choosing wise words in that situation, and I'm not saying sugarcoating or watering down the message. I'm saying let's choose our words wisely, and remember that we all want dignity. We all want our life to matter. I mean, that's a basic human need. So to have that common goal, I think is more important than what political party or where you stand on certain issues. I think human dignity is something we can all get behind.
Yeah, and there's inherent worth because we're created by God.
Amen.
Let's talk a little bit about your faith specifically and how it's influenced you and helped you in this conversation, just in general as well.
Just God's comfort and peace, to experience that throughout, the more challenging or sorrowful times. But just generally looking for God and looking for opportunities, because it's one thing to, post about it or complain about it or have a conversation about it, but looking for opportunities. What can I do? I think that's been my experience so far. Additionally, kind of looking inward at myself, praying David's prayer about search my heart, Lord, and just get that junk out of me, and if the greater part of society has been blind to something like this for so long, what other blind spots are there with me, with the people that I associate with all of us?
Nate, I'm grateful that you're willing to sit down and share part of your story, open up. It's kind of a vulnerable place to be, and I'm really grateful that you're willing to share who you are, your perspective on all this.
Well, I'm grateful to be a part of a community that's willing to have a conversation like this, because it's not easy, it's messy, but good will come from it. I'm excited about God's people doing God's work, I think big things are going to come out of it. And valuing people, valuing dignity, that's all God's work. So we're fortunate to be a part of it.
Thanks so much for watching. To see more of these discussions or to find out more information about Community Christian Church, you can check out the CCC website or you can connect with us on social media.